We didn't have any wheels to play with except on a plow. It was too sandy to ride a bike, so we rode a lot of horses. It was 5 miles to school going east. Our house was the last one west of the school at the end of the road. High school. Basketball in the winter and baseball in the summer. Not enough for football. Took just about all the boys in the school to field a baseball team. Wasn't very many teams that could beat us. One year, Frank, myself, Ken, and Olin were all on the varsity team. We went to the state tournament. Won our first game. Then it rained all night, flooded the playing field. We didn't have enough money to stay until it dried up, so we matched a game with the team that won. It was Fort Cobb, Oklahoma. We won 6-2, but they already had the trophy. Of course, we considered ourselves the champs. My junior year, there wasn't enough ADA for Lincoln to maintain a high school, so we were bused into El Dorado, a town about 6 miles east. Came back to Lincoln my senior year and graduated in 1936. I drove a school bus my senior year. There was 12 seniors that year, 12 graduates. While I was driving the bus one day in April, early April, the superintendent came out and said, we're dismissing school early. There's a bad storm coming, and we got to get kids home before it hits. So I got my bus ready to go and loaded up my students, and before I got the route finished, I was hung up in a snowdrift. The whole bus couldn't get through. So I only had 5 kids left on the bus, so I left them on the bus and went to the nearest farmhouse and got a neighbor with some team of horses and a wagon, came over and delivered the other kids to their home, and that old bus sat in that snowdrift for about a week. And that summer, I drove a tractor disking land for $9 a week, helping Dad a little on the farm. And there was a young, red-haired school teacher came to Lincoln, her first teaching job. Her name was Thelma Bybee. She taught English and public speaking in high school. I had already graduated and was running around looking for work, so a friend of mine and I hitchhiked to South Texas, got a job in a tomato cannery, where my friend's uncle was the foreman. We were getting 25 cents an hour for checking to be sure the women who were peeling the tomatoes didn't put a bunch of unpeeled tomatoes in the bottom of the bucket. They got 5 cents for peeling an 8-quart bucket. When we came home, it was on a Friday, and there was a baseball game at school. School always turned out early for a game, and one of my schoolgirl friends, I found out later that she ran up to Thelma and said, "Miss Bybee, my boyfriend is here," and she pointed me out to her. The first date Thelma and I had was a so-called blind date. We went to a movie in Quanah, Texas, saw Gone with the Wind. The following year, in 1940, we were married on May 25th, the day after school was out. In 1942, we moved to Oklahoma City. I got a job at the Frisco Railroad Roundhouse, 75 cents an hour. Of course, I had to register for the draft, as all the young men did that time, as war was imminent. We were in Oklahoma City when I was ordered to come for induction into the Army. I went in for my physical, and they told me I had a spot on my lung for me to go on home. Well, that scared me, of course. Ken and Olin had joined the Navy, and Frank was in the Army, and I went back to work for the railroad. But it wasn't long, and I was concerned about the spot on my lung, so I asked for a pass to go to St. Louis to the railroad hospital. And Thelma went with me, and we spent all day in the hospital. The doctors couldn't find anything, which made me feel better. So it wasn't long till the Army called me for re-examination. Since Ken and Olin were in the Navy, I knew if I took the Navy physical and passed, I would surely have passed the Army. So I enlisted in the Navy, passed all the tests, and was off to Great Lakes for boot camp. Velma went back to her teaching job at Lincoln. Boot camp was quite an experience. It was in the wintertime in the drill field where we had to get up early every morning and go out and drill. The first company out had the worst of it because they had to trump the snow down, and the next ones got out, just slipped and slide and all over the place. There wasn't much precision drill. It was cold. I remember the snow was so deep that our barracks was right across the street from the mess hall. We had to dig out across the tunnel across the street to get in to eat. But we lived through it, learned a lot of things about what we were supposed to, and took a lot of shots and inoculations to get everything ready to go. Well, we stayed in boot camp for 6 weeks. Got a 9-day leave to come home. Came home, it was still in the wintertime and cold in Oklahoma. Stayed my 9 days, reported back to Great Lakes, and then when they started making assignments, I was assigned to go to diesel school in Chicago. Well, Chicago was still colder than Great Lakes, and we were stuck right out on Navy Pier, extended out into Lake Michigan. It was one time they had the World Fair there, and the buildings were still there, so they used it as a training school for diesel training, because most of the engines on the ships burned diesel fuel. So we had supposed to have 6 weeks training in the school, and then being assigned to some base or ship. Well, a week before graduation time, I woke up one night and I had a severe ear infection in both ears. I was so sick, and they scared me because I woke up and I had corruption all over my pillow. So I went to the sick bay and they put me in the hospital, and I lay there for 2 weeks. They wouldn't let me even get up because as long as there was some moisture showed in my ears. So I missed my buddies that I'd gone to school with, and so it became a one-man draft. I didn't know what to do with me. Well, Thelma was there in Chicago, and we rented an apartment just down the street away from Navy Pier, and I could get anyone that was married could get every other night out, I guess it was. Yeah, every other night out we could get out and be with our wives, and so I was just doing guard duty there on Navy Pier after I got out of school and waiting to be sent somewhere. So I had a friend that he and his wife had an apartment in the same building where we were, and so it came up one morning. We were supposed to check the draft board every morning to see if our names was on it. Got up this morning and checked it, and sure enough, my name was on it. I was being sent somewhere, so it just happened that I saw the orders, and it said San Francisco.